Hi, I'm Kathleen Ryan. I'm one of the co-authors of Living in the Simulacra. And this book came about because Mark approached me. We'd been working together on some other projects, and he said, I want to write something about the simulacra. And it was an area he hadn't written about before, and I had. I'm like, okay, that's kind of a lot to chew off, but let's try for it. Let's go for it. But we have to find the right thing to analyze. We have to find the right thing to look at. And he agreed, and so we decided to start looking for stuff. And a couple of weeks later, I came across something, a book and photographic project by a photographer from Magnum named 𝗔𝗯𝘀𝘁𝗿𝗁 that was called the Book of Bells. And the Book of Bells really deals with all of these issues that are so much about what the simulacra is. Really questioning what we know about truth and what truth claims are, and if we can really trust what we see. And how all of these things are interrelated with culture and what we learn online and all of these other things. And the book and the photographic project was successful enough that it hoodwinked a bunch of really, really high-level photographers and high-level photographic organizations. And so I brought it to Mark, and he was like, yeah, let's go for it. And that became really the groundwork of what we were looking at in this book, and eventually would lead to this larger project where we brought in David.
Thanks, Kathleen. I'm going to be talking about why now for this book project. I think we could just as easily consider why then as an equally urgent question. So why then did we start this project about 3 years ago? We collectively were intrigued at that time by what seemed like this sort of inexorable creep of the simulation of experience, from a sort of rare encounter to a recognition that this lived simulacrum was gaining a toehold in our experiences, whether that be reading a highly regarded book that was later proven to be a totally fabricated and was facilitated by artificial intelligence and CGI, to entering the uncanny valley at a global trade show years ago where we saw avatars that were authoritatively delivering newscasts. Or maybe it was even a few years ago when we went to attend an experimental theater production that was masterminded by the Talking Heads' David Byrne, in which our senses were fooled into believing that we were tasting, seeing, and even smelling things that, quote unquote, really weren't there. But they were. They were just not in the sort of Platonic model of the theory of forms, or that sort of one-to-one relationship that is or was the basis in idea and ideal of ontology. Those examples of firsthand knowledge that I just described were actually simulations of experience with immediate reward, or sometimes we met them with repulsion. I can tell you that the food sensation taste testing that was at Byrne's Theater of the Mind production was not entirely pleasant. Mostly, though, we considered those encounters with sort of a healthy skepticism, and more importantly, a sense of curiosity and a host of questions. Might these simulations enter the mainstream as potentially a powerful force in their ability to act as convincing tools? Or could they gain traction to create, through visual manipulation, a sense of false nostalgia, or using those same pseudo-creations of reality act to incriminate or indict things not in existence? And the abiding question was always, if real is not real, then what is true? That potential is the now part of my why now question I started with. Each of us has become, sometimes knowingly, but often not, implicated in what was once a creep of these simulacra into our day-to-day, to the full force tsunami that is AI integration into our lives contemporarily. And so then as now, we hope this book and our considered and well-researched musings about it are more relevant than ever, because what's really at stake here, and this is the now part, is the human condition and its experience as either organic or synthetic, and that's a topic of debate, with truth, with labor, with our environment, with ethics and creativity and memory, and ultimately with our connections with one another. I'm going to hand things off now to my co-author, Mark.
As we embarked on this project, we approached it through the lens of Jean Baudrillard. Arguably, he's one of the most relevant philosophers and cultural theorists for considering today's media landscape. His concepts of the simulacrum and hyperreality, though developed well before the ubiquity of the internet and before the dominance of social media, described conditions in which representations of reality ultimately replace reality itself, to the point where the distinction between the two collapses entirely. So our book concentrated on how the simulacra affect mediated communication in fields such as advertising, filmmaking, journalism, public relations, and others. The reason is simple. Content from these fields is often taken as evidence of epistemological truth. This is reflected in our historical understanding of visually mediated text, aka the image. Baudrillard delineated 4 phases of the image. Phase 1. The image is a reflection of a profound reality. For example, early documentary photography was received as pure evidence. A daguerreotype of a street scene was understood as an unmediated capture of reality. The camera was a truth machine. Phase 2. The image masks and denatures a profound reality. An example of this is advertising photography in the mid-20th century that presented images of domestic life in post-war America that masked the realities of gender constraint, racial exclusion, and economic anxiety behind the gleaming surfaces of consumption and happiness. Something real was being concealed. Phase 3. The image masks the absence of a profound reality. For example, reality TV in its early forms, shows including Big Brother or The Real World, performed authenticity so insistently that they masked the fact that no unmediated reality was being captured, only a produced, edited, structured simulation of the real. Phase 4. The image holds no relation to reality whatsoever. For example, CGI and digitally generated environments in cinema, such as battle sequences in the Marvel films or Avatar's presentation of the world Pandora, have no physical reality whatsoever. They are images of things that do not exist, yet audiences receive and process them experientially without any underlying referent. Today's media landscape is defined by curated social media personas, AI-generated content, deepfakes, influencer culture, and algorithmic news feeds. So Baudrillard reads less like theory and more like prophecy. When people perform versions of their lives for Instagram, or when a political narrative spread online becomes more consequential than the actual event it distorts, we are living inside what he called the hyperreal. Baudrillard's work anticipated the way the consumption of images and signs has replaced engagement with things of actual substance. Identifying and critiquing the traces of simulation may have been more theoretically possible in the broadcast era, in which Baudrillard explored his concepts. His ideas nonetheless provide a framework for interrogating media today. Maybe not as a roadmap for discovering answers, but as a set of questions worth continuing to ask. An awareness of the simulacra, even without a clear remedy, is itself theoretically and ethically meaningful. As Baudrillard addressed in his later writing, stating, "The real vanishes into the concept. It is by studying the act of disappearance and its remaining trace that we may offer the best potential for interpreting the image-driven media environment in which we exist."
Thanks, Mark. The book is available on MIT Press, and we are looking forward to talking about it more in detail at IFM, and also having this live in eternity so all of you can see it and learn about the project and learn about the book and what we think about our contemporary world and mediascape.